Well, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Open Education Week webinar. I'm joined by Cori, Wilhelm, and Tony DeFranco, who are going to be sharing about using OER data to promote access. Cori is the program manager for the SUNY Office of Library and Information Services, and she works with campuses on various library initiatives, including SUNY OER Services and Student Success. Tony is the director of operations for SUNY OER Services, and he works with faculty, staff, and campus leaders to help them adopt, scale, and sustain OER initiatives at their institution. Welcome to you both, and thanks for sharing what you know with us today.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks to SUNY Online for putting this together. It's always great working together. And thank you to everyone who is here. And it looks like we've got some more familiar faces, so it's great to see you back. I'm going to share, let's see, second. And okay. So first off, we'll talk a little bit about SUNY OER Services, what we do, what we've accomplished together through our partnerships, and then we'll talk a little bit about data and how that data can be used. So SUNY OER Services is a shared services organization for SUNY institutions that are looking to build, support, and expand open education programs and practices. And we really focus in a few different areas. One is lowering the cost of higher education for students, but we also want to improve the teaching and learning process. And we think with the tools and through these partnerships, we're able to accomplish that together. And also empowering faculty to use these course materials that are best suited to their needs. We've seen tremendous success because we've utilized our own expertise, but also the expertise from outside organizations like Lumen Learning and Carnegie Mellon University's Open Learning Initiative. And they provide us low-cost digital courseware that takes advantage of the power and flexibility of OER. The content in all of the Lumen and OLI courseware meets SUNY EIT policy. It goes through extensive review for inclusiveness, diversity, and equity, so that students can really see themselves and their lived experiences featured in the course materials. We have a large network of partners. These partnerships allow us to provide critical external supports and offerings. They allow us to leverage existing services in SUNY, such as help desk support that many of you here utilize from SUNY Online Support Services. SUNY CPD, or Center for Professional Development, they do a lot to assist with training and other professional development activities, such as Lumen Circles. SUNY Press, they provide publishing and print services. And of course, our key partners, again, like Lumen and OLI. And our overall goal really is to increase the success for SUNY learners, whether that's in a face-to-face setting, hybrid, HyFlex, or fully online. And our work with our partners has demonstrated that OER really is much more than just about the open content itself. We've seen that it really has helped faculty think about how they want to reshape their courses. One of the concerns that we often heard from faculty early on was that who didn't adopt OER was that they weren't really willing to embrace it because it was a really heavy lift. And revising their entire course on their own was just a lot of work, a lot of time that they really didn't have. It involves just a tremendous amount of time. So to address those concerns and barriers, we introduced the Ready to Adopt course catalog a few years ago. The catalog, which is available at oer.suny.edu, features over 120 accessible and easily customizable courses. They're primarily high enrollment and general education courses. They seamlessly integrate into the LMS. Faculty can easily adopt a course by filling out a brief online form on the website or by emailing the SUNY Online Help Desk. And through these partnerships with Lumen and OLI, all content is available at no cost to students and will continue to be until fall of 2024. Because the content's openly licensed, faculty have the freedom to revise and remix it to match their plan for their courses. As part of SUNY's overall effort to provide broad-reaching support for improving the teaching and learning process, we've coordinated with help from SUNY Center for Professional Development, Lumen Circles. These are fellowships focused on professional development for faculty that are available at no cost to campuses and faculty. They offer faculty a structured opportunity to explore effective instructional practices that support student success, and they learn how to apply these practices to their own teaching. Folks who participate can connect and share ideas with other faculty in their circle and critically reflect on the areas they want to grow as instructors. The circle's themes are generally not OER specific, but rather focus more on the pedagogical practices. One of the more recent and popular themes is belongingness and inclusive teaching fundamentals. This theme explores evidence-based practices that support student success by shaping the learning environment to recognize and build on the diverse experiences and strengths of all students. This is a snapshot of how we see OER being used at the various sectors. Community colleges were first to embrace OER on a large scale. Several were also involved in creating OER degree programs, often called V degrees, and general education pathways. Leaders at a few of these campuses then integrated OER into student success initiatives on their campuses, such as first-year experience courses that might be tied to guided pathways. At the four-year comprehensives, we've seen large-scale OER adoptions at the program and department level. The technology sector is focused on incorporating OER into their existing programs of excellence and for faculty development. And we've noticed large-scale adoptions in math and science courses at the university centers. Since 2017, we've seen tremendous growth. Over 650,000 students have been enrolled in at least one OER course section. $16 million state investment has resulted in over $80 million in savings for students on their academic materials, whether it's textbooks or access codes. Over 2,600 SUNY faculty are teaching with OER, and there are over 21,000 OER course sections that we're aware of. Since the OER services began, we've seen consistent growth in OER adoptions. This has resulted in students saving a lot of money on their course materials, of course, but the content in the catalog consists primarily of high enrollment and general education courses. Soon after the pandemic began, we really saw a significant uptick in the number of faculty who adopted OER. We believe COVID-19 was the driver, as it required faculty and students to quickly transition to remote teaching and learning. But we also believe it was because our faculty were sensitive to the financial struggles that face their students. The 2021 academic year alone saw student savings of $19.2 million. We expect to see savings of over $21.5 million for the current academic year. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Cori. She's going to talk about Cori.
Okay, and as Tony described, we've seen OER course adoption grow significantly over the past, especially few years. And we need to make sure that we're tracking and assessing the data associated with that growth. And this has been a challenge for campuses since the SUNY OER initiative started. So we understand that and we're here to help with it, but we do have some best practices we'll share. I see this as a three-step process for campuses. Although some of these steps involve a lot of work and time. I don't want to say it's just three quick steps. But the first step is to build a culture of support on campus for OER. And it can be challenging at first. And I think, the campuses Tony highlighted back on the slide with the four sectors, those are really the OER leaders, but we understand everyone's at a different place in the OER adoption process. So this is really kind of the beginning, is to build that culture. And I think it's important to try to do that both from the top down with support from administration and also from the bottom up with support from students and faculty. And that requires a lot of communicating with the various stakeholders on campus, administrators, chairs, deans, faculty and instructors, and certainly the students. The next step is identifying the courses. It takes time and organization to do this. On each campus, should be an OER campus lead, and part of their charge is to kind of take that step of IDing the courses. We'll get into that a little further. And last, we need to make sure that information is coded into Banner or whatever student information system is used on your campus, so that the data can be sent to Cirrus and accessed by campuses and SUNY system. That also generally makes it searchable for students. I'll have you go forward, Tony. We're going to look at a couple different campus examples. So at SUNY Canton, for step one, building the culture, They created an OER task force, and Canton is a smaller campus who moved kind of early to adopt OER. The provost at the time created a committee or OER task force with a charge of recommending strategies to campus to encourage the creation, adaptation, or adoption of OER, to explore different funding opportunities, and to set a sustainability plan moving forward. And I think this was a pretty key step in OER being so successful at Canton, because this committee was composed of faculty from all 3 academic schools, the directors of online learning and student accessibility services, and the library director, who's also the campus lead. And by getting all these different stakeholders together in the conversation right at the start, it gave everyone a voice. I think having the faculty voice on the committee was essential. It included faculty who were not OER supporters, who were kind of resistant to the idea of changing everything up. And that voice is important to include as well, because you need to consider all perspectives. And this also created what I would call go-to people for faculty to approach with questions. If only one person on campus, maybe they're in the library, is in charge of all OER, and you don't know them, maybe you're not going to approach them. But by knowing people in your department or your school are involved, it makes that communication a little bit easier. And at this point, it's pretty critical to make a communication plan. With faculty specifically at Canton, many had reluctance to OER, and there was certainly reluctance to highlighting which courses and which instructors were using OER. There's kind of a general fear of change that comes naturally, but there was also another fear that students would gravitate toward the courses using OER, and thereby shifting enrollment away from folks who were not using it. And so that created a little bit of tension on the campus. And at that point, it was really important to have administrative support. And a decision was made with the recommendation by the task force to make those OER courses searchable for students. And that, initially that did mean maybe students would go, to one course or another. But after establishing that supportive culture on campus, it was more helpful than harmful. And certainly the communication to students is really critical. Most students have no idea what OER means, but are attracted to the idea of free textbooks. So outreach and marketing, including a video, these are stills from the video that featured faculty and students. It helped more people understand what OER is and what it can do for students and faculty. The committee also met with student government leaders to help them understand OER, and they again became those go-to people if students had questions about it. And you can move forward, Tony. So to identify the courses, this is an example from Monroe Community College. Monroe has among the highest OER course offerings in SUNY, so it's a big task to do this. Monroe has an Access Services and OER librarian, Michelle Beachy. She provides OER course development support for faculty, and she developed this Google form, which she uses to identify OER courses each semester. Because the course sections and the instructors frequently change, it is a big challenge to keep track of this. So using a form such as this generates an autofilled spreadsheet, which can be shared with the registrar's office, who generally does the coding. And it also helps the OER lead keep track of the trends and changes among faculty OER use on campus, which is important. So once you've identified the courses, that's a pretty critical step. It's important to indicate that somewhere. So like I said, registrars' offices are typically the ones in charge of that step. Sometimes it's online learning as well. And they can indicate in Banner or the SIS with an attribute on the course section. And you can advance, Tony. So step 3 is adding the attribute. Here is a screenshot of Monroe Community College's class schedule. So the arrow indicates a checkbox which students can use to limit their course search to courses using OER. And you can go ahead one more, Tony. This is another example at Empire State College. When registering for classes, students can search the OER attribute by selecting it from a drop-down on this menu, and then forward one more, Tony. This arrow shows on the Browse Classes registration page where students can see which classes are using OER. And this information is really critical for students. I think textbooks are just one more cost, one more part of the challenge of the cost of higher ed for students. And so it's important that they can filter out the courses which are using more affordable course materials. But like I said, this is where it's important to have consistent communication with students. They need to know how to search for courses this way, what OER means when they see it. Savvy students will know how to do this. Those are the same students who know how to get books from the library or purchase used online or rent books. But it's critical that all students can do this, including incoming students. And so I think another part of that communication piece is to make sure advisors are part of the conversation. So they're aware of what OER means and how students can ID the classes this way. And the critical thing is that the classes are properly coded. To be able to use this data, we need to make sure it's done right. And that, like I said, has been a challenge on campuses because it's a lot of classes and a lot of information shifting each semester. But when they are properly coded, that information can go through Cirrus and be accessed by your campus institutional research department as well as SUNY. And Tony, you can move forward.
Okay, and I'll jump in here. Thanks, Cori. So as Cori mentioned, getting this information in Cirrus to begin may be a bit of a challenge, but it really is important. And when OER course sections are properly coded and reported into Cirrus, they appear in a data dashboard. This is what we see, and this is what we'll often share with campuses. This data is essential to us at the system office because it allows us to measure growth, progress, and impact that the use of OER has on campuses across the system. It helps us make a case for why this funding is so important. It helps also inform us on which professional development or professional activities we should put attention on and where to focus our available resources so that we can best meet the needs of campuses. What I'm sharing with you is a screenshot of how some of this data appears at our end. We see the zip codes for individual courses on campus, and we can also see the course IDs and titles that are designated by the campuses. When data is reported, we can run these queries for individual campuses to show how many sections are offered, how many students are enrolled in the courses, and their overall performance. Now, as shown in this example of a couple of psychology courses, you can see how students enrolled in these courses perform in comparison to their counterparts in the non-OER sections. You can see that there are higher pass rates for both fall and spring sections for the OER sections than there are in the non-OER sections. You can also see that the average grades are higher overall for students in the OER sections. Using data such as this helps to justify investing in resources to support OER on campus, not just at the system level, but on campus. I think I must have jumped ahead a little bit. Let me go back for a second. Sorry. So we don't know specifically why some students or why some of these courses are performing better with OER than the counterparts in the non-OER sections. Maybe it's because students don't have access to the materials for a couple of weeks if they're using maybe publisher materials. That obviously could present obstacles for success. It could be because the learning's more effective in the OER classes, maybe because of the adaptive courseware being used, could be because the content is customizable, which better supports learning objectives. Could be due to the faculty being excellent instructors, or maybe some combination of those things, or maybe none of those things. But the point is, when we see something positive happening, we want to share that with campuses. So we need to pay attention to it and invest in resources in it to continue the momentum as it's clear that students are benefiting from it. This is another example of a psychology course where we see students in the OER sections, again, outperforming students in the non-OER sections. We're not sure why, but it could be for a number of the reasons that we mentioned. Data is also tracked on a number of campuses to show savings per semester and or cumulative savings. A small community college, for example, could show savings of $500,000 for its students. That's very significant. These savings may mean that many of those students could redirect the dollars they would have spent on textbooks to life essentials, such as paying the rent or putting gas in the car. It could also afford them the opportunity to take additional courses so that they can finish their degrees sooner, which obviously saves them additional tuition costs. The college can use this information for their own campus analyses or maybe for decision making. This type of savings can help make an even stronger case for the continued investment in OER on campus. As Cori mentioned, we've got a number of campuses who are doing a very good job of coding their courses and reporting into CIRRUS, and we can in turn provide that data back to them so that they can use it on their campuses. We've had some campuses that don't request this information so that they can see the impact OER is having on their campuses. And again, we're always happy to provide it, but unfortunately, we can't provide that information to them unless they give us the data. So this is why it's really important to get the courses properly tagged and into CIRRUS. And I think at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Cori.
Thanks. Yeah, so as Tony said, when properly coded, the campuses and SUNY system can both access that data, and they can often see measurable outcomes with it, which is important. There are opportunities to use this in a few different ways. So this is an example of the financial impact of OER adoption. Often faculty and staff wonder if what they're doing, matters, if the work they put in makes an impact. And we understand converting a course to OER is work. It takes time and effort. Depending how much the faculty wants to put in it, it can be rewriting an entire course. So showing this kind of information can illuminate the significant impact of their work. And I really like putting a dollar sign to it. It's OER is a lot more than money savings. It's about access. It's about exploring different teaching methods and learning methods. But when you can say cumulative savings over $1 million, people's ears kind of pick up and you take notice. I find pairing this data with student feedback also has a really positive impact on other faculty considering OER, on campus administration and even students. Getting some of that qualitative feedback with it is vital. The graph on the right of this slide shows the percentage of course offerings using OER each semester. And this information came from SUNY OER Services using the coded courses in CIRRUS when requested. But this can be used as a marketing figure, I think, for admissions. And this is a way, we don't always think about OER as we think it for the current students, but it can be used for prospective students. Although most prospective students, might not understand OER or, all that open access means, they can understand the cost of textbooks. They understand what college is going to cost. And this information can be included in outreach efforts. Admissions can share this information with students and parents during open houses and other recruitment activities. When parents hear free or affordable, they pay attention. And as Tony mentioned, when COVID shut everything down, the students in the courses that were using OER never lost access. This meant more OER courses equated to more access at a time when students were struggling the most with access issues. Again, that can be turned into a marketing statement for your campus, that you're promoting access and you understand everyone's kind of at a different space right now with learning, but this is one way to reach students wherever they are. Furthermore, as enrollments decline, which we're seeing across the board, students now have more choice about where they attend, and incoming student demographics are changing to include more non-traditional and adult learners, more students have jobs in addition to attending school. So the percentage of courses with free or affordable materials can be a positive influence when students are deciding what school to attend. Having more affordable and accessible course materials can make your campus more competitive. And we can move to the next, Tony. This is just another graphical representation of the data, which was presented. This again is Canton's data. It was presented to faculty and staff during a campus-wide meeting. Showing the data in this way both recognizes the work everyone put in, the faculty, the instructional designers and online learning, the librarians, all the staff, but also the impact it has for the students. When you can put a dollar sign like that, a significant dollar sign, it kind of says, you know, all the work you did does mean something. 4,400 students were enrolled in courses for which they didn't have to purchase additional textbooks. That's significant. Saving students $500,000 in one academic year is significant. But this can only be celebrated if the information is shared. The information can only be gathered if it's reported properly. So SUNY OER Services also can work with campuses to identify future opportunities for OER adoption by analyzing course enrollment, specifically in Gen Ed courses. You can identify which courses will have the most significant impact if they transition to OER. This is part of that data-driven decision-making that can happen when the data is properly coded. When this information is shared, it leads to decisions being made. Specifically at Canton, the psychology department looked into it, looked into their enrollment numbers. Psych 101 is a gen ed course, and they decided to all move toward OER, and that's part of the increase you see on that graph. Another course, anatomy and physiology, had an exceedingly expensive textbook. They worked with librarians to look into different options, found one that will work, and committed to using OER. That had a significant impact on the cost to students. So by attaching specific dollar amounts to that shift, making the decision to shift from traditional textbooks to OER, campuses can calculate a return on investment, the time that it takes to do that work. By properly coding the courses, you can use that data to highlight which courses are more affordable, market that to current and prospective students, and make relevant decisions moving forward. And that's, I think, the end. Do we have questions?
Thanks, Cori. So I was seeing in the chat, I think Sophia may have addressed this, but Rachel asked about how do you get instructors to provide the information, the data? Do we retrieve it from our campus bookstore? But Sophia mentioned how at Tompkins Cortland, they retrieve the information from the SIS and institutional research because the OER courses are tagged specifically. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I think Rachel's question, you know, that is one of the big challenges, is getting the information. It's not that instructors don't want to share it, but they may not be aware it needs to be reported or how to report it. So each campus should have an OER campus lead who's in contact with instructors. Sometimes it's easiest to go through the department chairs. Sometimes the administrative assistants for the departments. It kind of varies campus to campus and even department to department who's got the most accurate information. But if that's something you're not sure about on your campus or your campus is struggling with, you can certainly reach out to Tony and I. You know, we work with a lot of campuses, and it is different on each campus. There's a different culture. Different folks check their email more often, we'll say, than others. So there's different communication methods to make that work.
So it sounds like it's I mean, I'm one of the campus leads. There are 3 of us, and to get this information has been extremely difficult. And the bookstore doesn't even get their orders in time, much less to get. So it sounds like quite an undertaking, but once you've done it, I suppose, and get it into the culture of the campus, it's much more smooth then. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think because it can vary semester to semester based on instructors and course sections, it's always going to be a little bit of manual work. But I think once you get a process down, but I definitely hear what you're saying, that faculty might not get their course adoptions in on time. So why would they get their OER reporting in, to you on time? But I do think the idea of using the Google form, and a couple other campuses use Microsoft Forms, it might simplify the process a little, but it does require the faculty to respond to that.
There are ways too that you can lessen the burden by maybe working with your IT department to help automate some of these processes. And I can speak to this because this was something we had done to try to mitigate as much of the manual work every semester as possible. The IT department, we had queries set up so that I knew exactly who was teaching with OER the previous semester, and I would run these queries to see where we are for the current semester, who's teaching, who's not, and I would see discrepancies. Well, this instructor taught for the last 2 or 3 semesters, but they're not teaching with OER this semester. I wonder what's going on. So I'd reach out to them, and it could have been just an input error or somebody forgot. So things like that can help alleviate a lot of that extraneous work.
And there's a question from Joan Marie about who the campus leads are, and in particular who her campus lead might be at Stony Brook. And maybe Tony, if you could put your email in the chat, she could reach out to you.
Yep, will do.
And then you'll have her email to be able to connect those dots. That would be great. Are there other questions? Okay, well, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and just do some of the wrap up, but feel free if anyone does have other questions to go ahead and ask those in the chat. We're still here. So I just want to point out that we have our full schedule and recordings available to you at the bit.ly there on the slide. And we do have more sessions this week, tomorrow and Thursday, that you can register for from a variety of different perspectives. Administration of OER, open pedagogy, faculty perspectives. It's really kind of a variety and a nice mix. I would also encourage you to complete the feedback survey so that helps us as we plan for our sessions next year, so that we can incorporate the kinds of things that you hope to see and learn about. I want to thank Tony and Cori for sharing the information with us today, and really just painting a picture of OER across SUNY and the impact that it has and how we can kind of capture and collect that data. So thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Thank you, everyone.